Okay. So, thank you. There is Karen. Karen. I was It's Karen, and there's John, and they're going to be talking about suicide, which is a very, um, uh, very much to the point at this moment in time here in the UK, with figures this morning of over 5,000 suicides in the last year, which is tremendously high. And the previous subject of David Snow talking about the broken heart syndrome, which has to do with depression, leads to all these kind of further prolific well, I'm hoping that you can offer us a solution there, and I'm going to give it over to Karen. Okay.
Thank you, Katharina, very much. The reason she's having a bit of a hard name with me is because most people over on the other side of the pond call me Karen. And it's not because they don't know my name is Karen, but it's just because of the pronunciation. So sometimes when they find out my name is Karen, they go, I gotta pronounce it right. And then they all mess it up. So no problem. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. All right, so now we're going to be talking to John Staples, so I'm excited about that. And I'm Karen Davidson at howtotap.com, and today I'm with John Staples, and you're going to get a lot of great info with him. He's a Reiki master, a certified EFT, matrix reimprinting, NLP, and emotion code practitioner. He's certified in heart math as a group trainer and a personal mentor. He's a mental health first aid instructor, a Living Works Safe Talk registered instructor, a QPR Institute Gatekeeper Suicide Prevention Program instructor, and he's UMBC certified in critical incident stress management. Now, John recognizes the relationship between stress, depression, trauma, and suicide, suicidal thinking, and he began combining his energy work training skills into his suicide prevention and awareness training, as well as volunteering for crisis phone lines and text lines. He trains teens through adults, first responders, military personnel. I'm going to say anybody who stops long enough and he can get to listen in suicide prevention and intervention. He even created these little custom patches that he's sewn onto his shirts that he wears that say, talk to me about suicide, so that people will stop and ask him. And so I would say that's dedication. So hi, John, welcome, and to Living Energy Day.
Well, hi, Karen. It's my pleasure to be here.
All right, so let's get started, if you would. Now, I know that you started in real estate. Now, how the heck did you get from real estate to energy work and prevention?
Well, Karen, I grew up in the military, and it was really the golden age of the military. I was born in 44, and I grew up for those 20 years, 44 to 64, in the military. And I had always thought that I would live a life of service in the military. And I came home from my freshman year in college, and I'd been sick to my stomach the whole year, and I hadn't really, I did okay, but I didn't love it. I really wasn't ready to be in school. So I decided I wanted to join the Army. I was going to become a helicopter pilot and go to Vietnam. And I was very excited about that possibility. I passed all the tests and went in finally to go in and got my physical. And it turned out that I had chronic ulcer disease, and I was considered unfit for service. And it was a big blow to me at the time. All my friends, of course, thought I was the luckiest guy in the world, but not to me, because I had intended to be in the military for my life. At any rate, I went on with my life, went back to school, and then 13 years ago, just before I turned 60, I began to look back and I reflected on my life, and I wondered, wow, am I ever going to come up with something or some way to be of service? And I started researching, and I researched for over a year, and I came to the conclusion that stress management was, was the single most important factor in our health and well-being. So I decided to learn about stress management. And in my investigations, wonderfully, I came across energy and energy work. And I started with Reiki, and I became a Reiki master. And I loved the work that I did in Reiki and what it taught me about energy. But I found it ponderous, and I wanted something a little more exciting, a little more interactive, and get the sense that I was really doing something for my clients, even though they were grateful. I didn't feel like I was having a big impact on their lives. So I looked around and I discovered EFT. And I became certified in University EFT, and I really liked it, and I began to use it with clients. And then I found Sylvia Hartman's AMT EFT, and I preferred that, and I preferred her protocol. And I ultimately became a trainer of trainers for AMT EFT. And I really, really loved doing energy work. But there was a barrier, it turned out, for me and those people, my target audience, which is the military and first responders. There was certain resistance, as you can imagine, and I found that I really wanted to find something that would speak to them. So I began looking out for other ways to deal with stress and help people with trauma. And I discovered the HeartMath Institute. And the cool thing about the HeartMath Institute is they were already under contract with the government to teach the Navy SEALs about stress management by using HeartMath techniques. So I loved it, and I went and got certified, and I've been using it with the military and first responders since then. And I was really enjoying that and enjoying that work. And then it was about 4 years ago, my oldest granddaughter started cutting. And that got my attention. And although cutting isn't necessarily associated with suicide, in her case, she was having thoughts of suicide. And so I became really fascinated with the issue of suicide prevention and awareness. And I realized it was a natural progression for me, because stress, of course, as we all know, is tied to the chronic runaway stress that is rampant in our society, and that stress yields to depression. And untreated depression is the single greatest risk factor for thoughts of suicide and feelings of hopelessness. So I became an enthusiastic student of suicide prevention and awareness and intervention, and I became ASIS trained, applied suicide intervention skills training. I took the Yellow Ribbon course. I took QPR, Question, Persuade, Refer, Paul Quinet's program. And I became a Safe Talk trainer. At any rate, I just threw myself into it and immersed into it, and have really thoroughly enjoyed that shift, because I discovered that although stress is important and we all know about stress, suicide has a lot more impact with people. And when you call them up and you tell them that you want to talk to them about suicide prevention and awareness, they don't hang up. They return your calls. Whereas when I was calling up people and saying, I know you're stressed and I'd like to help you with that, they're kind of, oh yeah, stress is part of life, we're okay. But at any rate, suicide has a much more cachet, if you will, and it gets more attention, and it gives me access to then teach people about the mindfulness techniques involved with stress management and how one can be in charge of their emotions. And so at any rate, that brought me to where I am today in stress management and suicide prevention and awareness.
And you volunteer for crisis lines and something really interesting, a text crisis line.
Yes.
I know you train a lot of people. Just right off the top, what's the most difficult thing you find people have with dealing with those who threaten suicide or talking about suicide, and even the word suicide? What do you find people have trouble with? The audio is a little low on you, but I can hear you. It's just a little hard for me to hear. But you're asking me about what is the biggest challenge for people when we're talking about suicide or they're having that challenge. And for the people who are working with others, and especially with family and friends, the real challenge with suicide is the stigma that's related to suicide. We in our society, and in most societies, it's actually through history. And there's a really fascinating bit I wrote about the history of suicide, but we don't have time for it today. But the key is that it's always been a subject that we just don't talk about. Right.
And there's so many examples of that in my work with teenagers or with anyone. Typically, when a kid has brought up to their parents that they're thinking about suicide, the typical response is, oh, don't talk about that. That's crazy. You wouldn't do that, would you?
Exactly.
And then, of course, that ends that conversation. But that kid is then going to text to the crisis line, hopefully.
Okay.
And we'll get to work with them and help them through that and help them understand what's going on. But that is the key, in my opinion. It's the issue of the stigma, and that's what I'm so passionate about and why I am involved with suicide prevention and awareness, is it's the stigma that creates the challenge. If we just looked at mental illness as the same as catching the flu, which in a sense it really is, then we could all talk about it and we can be open about it, and we say, well, John's depressed and he's having thoughts of suicide and feeling hopeless. We need to rally around him and do what we can for him. And it's the opposite of that. When you bring up that subject, people turn away and walk away, and mom doesn't want to talk about it. It's too upsetting.
So John, let me ask you about that. In the statistics, let's say I'm afraid of bringing up the word suicide because I think that maybe by saying that, it will make them think of it.
No, right. Well, that is a common misbelief, but we've done lots of research about that. And it absolutely is not true. Talking about suicide, discussing suicide with someone is not going to make them have those thoughts. To get to that place where you're thinking about suicide is a very complex event, both physiologically and emotionally, and it happens over time. So no, that's not an issue, and that's one of the common beliefs, and thank you for bringing that up.
And since we're there, the study on the bridge about the 30, I think it was 36 people.
Oh yeah, that's wonderful. Well, there's a bridge, and it's the second most popular bridge in the world for completing suicide. And they have special programs. The workers are trained, the police are trained. They have signs up to tell you that there's help for you if you're thinking about jumping. And they even have volunteers that patrol this bridge to try to prevent that from happening. But the bridge was built in 1937, and since then over 1,600 people have completed suicide from this bridge. But the fascinating thing is in 2013 we discovered through research that 36 people had actually survived the jump, and it was over 250 feet. You're going 75 miles an hour when you hit the water. 95% die from the impact, and the other 5% die from exposure. So, but there were 36 people who had jumped and actually survived. And of that 36, they were able to find and interview 16. And of those 16 people, every one of them had the same experience. And it was so revealing, and it's so revealing about what's happening with us with suicide. Nobody really wants to complete suicide. What we're hoping for is that someone will help us not complete suicide. So each person, there was the expression, as soon as I let go, I knew I'd made a mistake. When I let go of the bridge and I saw the abutment coming towards me, I swam through the air to get away from that thing and live. I knew I wanted to live. I knew that anything I had in my life I could solve if I could just live through that jump. So that's the thing, and that's the really frustrating thing about this, is that we know that nobody really wants to complete suicide. And 90% will reach out within 2 weeks before they attempt to someone in some way to let them know as obliquely or as obviously as possible that they're thinking about suicide, and what they're really saying is, please help me not complete suicide.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but I have a really interesting question. Now, I have done crisis lines myself, but you told me that you do text crisis lines.
Yeah. Yeah, well, let me talk about that. That's
what is it? I mean, they text and I mean, isn't there a waiting time? And if you're going to commit suicide and you're text, how does that work?
Well, you want me to tell you the history of it first, or we'll talk about?
We don't need. Let's just for now, because we only have 50 minutes, right?
Okay. Well, we'll see if we do, because it's fascinating how it got started.
Sure.
But the way the crisis text line works is that we have a short code, it's called. You text 741741, and you are connected with the crisis text line. Now, the crisis text line is our goal on that line is to never let anybody wait more than 5 minutes. And based on the data that we gather from these, and it's been in use for about 4 years now, and that's something else that's really fascinating. We know that what times of days the largest volume of calls are going to come in. We know that on Monday, from 5 a.m. to 7 p.m., we're going to get the biggest volume of calls are going to be about eating disorders. We know that 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. in the mornings is when people have challenges, the most challenges with drug abuse. So at any rate, so we have working online at those hours when we know what the load is going to be. There are, instead of being 40 crisis counselors, there might be 120 crisis counselors. So our goal, as I said, is that no one waits more than 5 minutes. And there's even what we call a strike team, and I'm on a strike team. Everybody, if you want to be on a strike team, you can. And what that is that when we're working like Robin Williams' suicide is a perfect example of this. When Robin Williams completed suicide, there was an overwhelming flood of calls to all crisis hotlines. There was a 3-hour wait.
Oh my Lord.
Oh yeah, but the cool thing about about the texting line, you know, I worked on a voice line also. I don't anymore, and I'll explain that. But I prefer the crisis text line. It's a much more efficient way to deal with people in crisis. But so, as an example, the Robin Williams incident. But when we're working with data, well, when you text in, you get an initial message that says, "There's a crisis counselor will be with you within a few moments. Please tell us what your issue is." Those words that they text in, "I want to die," "I want to kill myself," I'm going to start cutting, or "I've been cutting and I'm going to cut some more." Well, there's an algorithm that's been built into the program, so those calls, they don't go to the end of that 3-hour line. They go right to the top. So the choices that we have, you know, the next person in the queue is going to be the person who's got an orange code, we call it, and that person is someone who's actually at risk for suicide or for self-harm. So it's a really efficient and excellent way to screen what's going on. And we know that that person that's at the top of the list, if the algorithm has said, boy, this person is talking about suicide, or this person is talking about self-harm, we know that's the guy at the top of the list. And of course, if you're on a voice line, right, there's no way to screen those calls.
Right.
So that's a really powerful aspect of it. And of course, the data that's collected, again, it's so amazing, and it's made available at crisistrends.org online, and you can go and look at the data, and it's just so amazing. We have crisis by times of day, by the day of the week, crises over time, and then crises by state. Like we know that people from Montana are the most likely to have thoughts of suicide.
Interesting. Well, John, that's actually very good information, and they have data on that. What I'm really interested too about the text line is the function of it. How, you know, somebody, "I'm going to kill myself," and then you wait, and then, you know, because texting takes time.
Yep.
How does it, you know, how does that work?
Well, as I said, you know, we almost always answer within 5 minutes. That's our goal. So they get quick response. But the way it works is as I said, you text in, you get a response that asks you to tell us what's up with you based on what the algorithm says. It depends on where you go in the queue. And then a counselor like me picks up. And our thing is, "Hi, I'm John. I'm a crisis counselor with CTL. I'm here for you now." And we'll usually respond to whatever they've said. You know, they might say, "I'm thinking about killing myself, and I'm just waiting till I'm ready." And then we will say, "Wow, it sounds like you're having a tough night. I want to be sure you're safe. Please tell me, do you have a plan?" I mean, that would be the very first thing I would say if someone says, "I want to kill myself," because we have to go through the protocol. There's a protocol for risk, and it's like 5 things we want to know. Do you have a plan, right? Do you have you set a time? Do you have access to a means, you know, pills, guns, whatever? And have you decided that this is your day? And if they answer yes to all of those, then they're considered what we call an active rescue, and they go into a whole different protocol. There are supervisors that work on the crisis line, and those all of the people who are counselors are volunteers. You have to be 18 years of age or older. You go through a really the best training that I have had, and I've been through a lot of trainings, as you know,
yeah,
in crisis counseling, or what do you would say, crisis intervention. And it's 6 weeks. It's about 8 hours to 10 hours a week of work that you have to do. And at any rate, it's an excellent program. But the counselor, the supervisors are all have masters or doctors in psychology or social work. And they're well versed in the program and the platform. So that, for example, the other day I had the text came in, it was, I've taken the pills, I'm waiting to die. And that was the message. And I got it and I saw it and I start typing and they hang up.
Oh my goodness.
But the wonder of the technology is that this, I flagged the call to the supervisor and she immediately clicked back, okay, I'm on it. She got the number, the phone number of his phone, called the local EMS services. They got to his house, got him to the hospital, you know, and life goes on.
Thank goodness life goes on.
Yeah. Yeah, we have 2.4 active rescues every day, and that may not seem like a lot, but it's a lot.
No, it seems like a lot. So you said to me once that because I am not familiar with the text line, just the voice line, that you said a lot of times that there's abused women, and the delay in the text is actually good because they can wait, text, and then wait, and then text. And so it does help them.
It does. It's a lot more orderly. And I mean, texting is unparalleled in its ability to relay information concisely. You know, we take out the tone of voice, right? We take out the drama. I mean, drama gets conveyed in the words, I assure you, but it makes it so much easier for the people who are sending the message. You know, it forces a kind of a real-time distillation of emotional chaos. And we know that also in energy work and energetically, when you're in a stressed state of mind, if you start writing about what you're doing and how you're feeling, it has a way of lowering your stress level. It allows you to see it more rationally, and it takes some of the charge out of it immediately. And so it works really well. And it works, I find, having done both phone and text, I much prefer texting. And the other thing that's fascinating about texting is when you're on the phone, you can only take one message at a time. But when you're texting, it allows you to take 3 or 4. You can handle 3 or 4 calls at once because of the lag time. And because once you get comfortable with it, you know, there's a really kind of a pattern, a structure to it, regardless of what the person is doing or saying. We know how to respond to those situations. The training that you get gives you all kinds of examples of, well, what do you say to a kid who's, you know, being abused by his mother or father? What do you say to someone who's a gay or LGBT and they're having identity issues? Or what do you say in any kind of crisis? They have what they call phrases and statements that they give you lists of things and how to approach that particular issue. And over time it gets very automatic, but you have so much material that they provide you with so that you get the exact words and the way to approach people so that we don't lose them. They like to say that we take people from a hot moment to a cool calm. We're not counseling them. Right, we're not actually giving them therapy. What we're doing is we're getting them to a place where they can work with us to find a plan to deal with their challenge in that moment right now so that they're safe and they get through the night and they get with a friend or a family member, or they can contact their counselor, whatever it is. We're not trying to solve all their problems, and we don't even try to. In fact, we often say, look, we can't solve everything tonight, but what's something that we can do together to figure out to keep you safe so we can get you into the morning and you can get more help, or you can get out of this crisis mode. And so it's really fascinating. And I must say, I did work on the voice line, but I don't anymore. A lot of reasons. One was it was an hour away, and so I had to drive an hour, and you do an 8-hour shift and you have to drive. So I had to give up 10 hours. And that's the elegance of the of texting, is the whole platform is designed so that you can be anywhere in the world. If you're a counselor and if you have a computer and access to the internet, then you can do your shift. You can interact with those people. Whereas, you know, with voice, I had to go to this center an hour away to answer that national suicide crisis line.
John, I know we didn't talk about this, so I'm kind of going to throw this at you. You do a lot of volunteer work, and I just want to let people know that they can donate to, and I hope I'm saying the right place, waronstress.org.
Yes, yeah, that's my nonprofit.
Okay, and so it is a nonprofit, so you know their donations are deductible, and you train firefighters and police, and you're doing it all volunteer. And it would be really nice if everybody, you know, listening or knew this, just even donated $5 to $25. Imagine what
would be wonderful.
Because you're also a trainer, so you're training people how to mitigate suicide, prevent suicide, intervene themselves. And so not only your time on the text line and the crisis lines, but also training that you don't get paid for.
Yes, thank you so much for that, because people want the training, but typically there's no budget for it. Earlier this year, I did the Charles County, the 425 sworn officers of the Charles County Sheriff's Office. They had no budget. So I ended up paying for the $2.50 for the booklet that everybody has to get the training. And I never got reimbursed for it, of course, and it's okay with me. But the point is
how many hours was that?
Well, I did, to get all 425 of them, I had to do 21 90-minute sessions. Right.
Out of the goodness of your heart. So please.
Yeah. Well, you know, we're all called to this work, and, you know, none of us are going to get rich doing it, but it would be great to get the expenses paid for.
Yes, that would be good. So if people would do that, that would be.
It would be wonderful. It's waronstress.org. And there's a place where you can click donate. So.
Okay. Can you tell us a couple of case studies, like some things that you did, and also to do the case studies? I know that they don't teach EFT, matrix re-imprinting, Eden energy medicine, heart math in what you're doing. So how do you integrate? What is it that, and of course you have a shorter period of time, and it's not a therapy session. It's not, you know, you're not going back before the energy was ever created, and you're not going back, you know, where they, you know, whatever it is that we do in our practice. So how do you manage to put together energy work, because you know that it works, into what you say on the crisis line, as well as, you know, how that works? You can also talk about the you know, the flight, fight, freeze response and the brain. Sure.
Well, actually, you know, from a metaphysical point of view, and that's where I operate, you know, energy being about metaphysics and quantum energy, is that I know that my care and concern for this person is helpful to them. If they get the sense from me that I care about them and I have feelings for them, then it helps them get themselves into a place, a cool calm. And so I'm not just talking to the people, I'm actually sending them feelings of gratitude for them. I send them unconditional love as I'm talking, and as I'm working on another case, I'll be reminding myself about Bob or whoever that other person is, and that I am actively using my energetic abilities to send them the feelings behind the words. And then also I will talk to them and help them understand what's going on with them. Everybody who calls in is stressed. Everybody who calls in is almost always they're depressed. And I know a whole lot about stress and depression and the physiology of them, so I share that with them. We talk about the fact that the flight or flight response was designed by our physiology to keep us safe from a physical threat to our lives as we were evolving as a species. Now, when we started building fences and houses, that daily life-threatening response became unnecessary, almost useless to us. Unfortunately, our physiology, trying to figure out what it could do to keep us safe, decided to apply this physical response event to emotional threats. So now, in modern times, we're all experiencing what we call chronic runaway stress because our physiology kicks in the fight or flight response as if the tiger was chasing us and it was just the guy that cut us off in traffic. But now we're challenged, we're stressed, and what happens when we're stressed, and most importantly, is that blood is taken away from the prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex, and that blood is directed to large skeletal muscles, again, so we can run fast and escape the tiger. In emotional threat, it doesn't help us. So it takes the blood away from that area of the brain, and that area of the brain is our center for cognitive reasoning and strategic thought. And also, it's our spiritual center. So what happens, and not in the sense of religion, that's our sense, it's the place where we get the sense of belonging, of that somebody cares about us, right? So when we go into stress, blood is taken away from that part of our brain because obviously our physiology figures we don't need to be able to think clearly or feel connected if we're going to escape that tiger.
Exactly.
So that rude clerk, right, that just told you or just ignored you, right, now you're thinking physiologically, does she have a gun in her purse? Is it possible she's going to reach out and do something horrible? And that's the challenge. So when we are in stress all the time, we actually maintain a state of not really being at our highest and best. We're not able to think clearly. We're not able to make sense of things. We're not able to recognize that there's a solution to our problem. And we don't feel like anybody cares. We think no one cares about us. So and that's why, you know, and we're trained this, but I add more of this into my calls. When people call in, I'm looking for an opportunity when they say, you know, nobody likes me, all my friends have deserted me, I don't deserve to live. And that's when you want to jump in and you say, I care about you and I want you to live. And that's why I do this work, because I know that you're a unique and special individual and that you're a perfect example of you, and we want you in this world. And that's the kind of energetic, you know, whenever there's an opportunity, and then as I said, I'm always sending them energy. And then the other thing I look for is an opportunity to tell them that I want to send them a hug, because they feel so disconnected. They feel so that no one wants to come near them, no one cares about them. So I'm sending you a hug right now, and I want you to feel me, put my arms around you and hold you and let you know how much I care about you. And I'm sending you that love right now. And it's really wonderful, and you can feel it having an effect on the people. And often things will like, you're a stranger, how can you do that? And I said, I'm not a stranger. I'm a human being just like you. We're all part of the same whole, and I'm here for you and I care about you. At any rate. So
do you also use heart math principles?
I do. I teach them quick coherence or heart-focused breathing, especially when it's clear to me they're having a real hard time. They'll circle, you know, they'll use, you know, repetitive thoughts, just like when we're in depression, you know, they get these looping things and they keep saying the same thing over and over again. Well, I'll ask them to do a focused breathing exercise with me on text. I know it sounds crazy, but it really does work. And I tell them what we're going to do, and then I say, okay, we're both doing this now. And of course, while they're doing that, I'm sending them unconditional love. I'm sending them everything I have, you know, to offer them as far as, you know, energetically, so that they'll get that message. And it works really well.
Can you just briefly describe about the vagus bundle and how breathing puts the blood back into frontal?
Oh, right, sure. Well, heart-focused breathing, I mean, this is one of the things I love about heart math is the research that they have done and others have done. Also, Bessel van der Kolk, there's been many different studies done. But with heart-focused breathing, this is the standard mindfulness technique. It's got 1,000 names and it's used all over the world. You shift your attention to the area of your heart or your chest, and you Excuse me. You breathe a little slower and a little deeper, and you just focus on the movement of your chest. And as you do that, you imagine that the air is actually flowing in and out of your heart.
I think it'd be nice if everybody did this with you.
That would be great. So why don't you guys join me, right? We'll turn our attention to our chest area. You breathe a little deeper and a little slower. You're breathing from the diaphragm. And as you do that, you imagine the air is flowing in and out of your heart directly. You just allow yourself to breathe a little deeper and a little slower. Well, we know when we start to do that, it's actually on the quantum level. The back of the stomach massages the vagus nerve bundle. And when it does that, it's sending a message to the prefrontal cortex. And I'm making this vastly simplified, but that's the essence of what's going on. When we start to use a mindfulness technique, like in particular, heart-focused breathing or breathing, the vagus nerve bundle gets stimulated, gets rubbed by the back of the stomach, sends a message to the prefrontal cortex and says, we need more blood up here. Guys, we screwed up. We know how to get you back to normal.
Right.
And it works really well. I've done it with hundreds of people, maybe thousands at this point. But
because now they're thinking, and that's one of the things about suicide, is that you're not thinking and you're not loved and there's no reason to live. And I mean, I myself have talked to people who have, are in the middle of suicidal thoughts, and they loop, and everything they say isn't making sense. And so you can't reason with them. You can't tell someone like that, oh, you're gonna be fine. It's going to
yeah, that's right.
It's because it's not, because they have no blood in their thinking brain. And by just breathing, and that's what I think is so great, that you're integrating the vagus bundle, the breathing, to get the blood back in the cortex, because then they can say, before they let go of the bridge, what am I thinking? Exactly.
And I see that all the time. When you're working with someone and they're having these looping thoughts, and I say, well, let's do this little exercise together. And they'll come out of it and they'll say, well, gosh, I don't know. It doesn't seem so bad now when I think about it. Right? Maybe I can make it to tomorrow and I can go see my counselor. I mean, it can happen that quickly. Or you can have somebody that just, is stuck. But that's part of the challenge, of course. But typically, I find that simple skill is an incredible advantage. I teach it. My grandkids do it. My family, I teach it all my family. Everybody finds it so powerful, and you only have to do it one time and get the sense of what's happening and realize, my gosh, I'm much calmer now. I can actually deal with this situation.
So, John, can you give us some just case studies off the top of your head of some of the situations, or I mean, you gave us one, but is there some others that we can hear?
I guess I had one about a couple of months ago. A young woman, and by the way, the vast majority of the people who call into the crisis text line are teenagers. A lot of teenage girls who are cutting, who have been abused. So let me think. I had a woman a couple of months ago, and I had been on the phone with her for so much time, and it was getting really frustrating, and she kept refusing to do anything. And finally I said, well, no, what happened? So many of these events take place. It felt like we were getting somewhere. And she had told me, and she had said, she had the pills in the room with her. And I said, please put the pills in another room. And she said, okay. And she said she'd done that. And I said, okay, so let's figure out what we can do to keep you safe. And she's at the house with her mother and father and a friend are in the house at that time. And it's like 3 a.m. And so I said, I'd like you to go wake up your friend and give her the pills and tell her what's happening at this point. And she said, well, I can't do that. That would disturb her. And I said, okay, then go give them to your mom. She said, oh, I can't do that. My mother would be furious with me. And I said, okay, well, we need to come up with a plan. And that's our goal in the crisis text line, is to come up with a collaborative plan that keeps that person safe. so that they can get through that hot moment. And she said, okay, I'll promise I won't take the pills, and I will go wake up my roommate. And I said, okay, well, I'll wait for you to do that. So she come back and she says, I took the pills. And I'm going, oh, okay, right. And I said, okay, well, now, and one of the issues that you have with people, it goes back and forth when they say they cannot be safe. They won't put the pills away, or they won't put the gun away. You say, okay, then I have to call EMS because I don't know that you're going to be safe. I can't believe you because you're telling me that that weapon is still there, or the pills are still there, and you're not going to avoid them. So she said she took the pills. So
did you end up sending somebody?
oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. I had already flagged the conversation with my supervisor, and she was following it. And when she didn't see that, and I immediately flagged her again. I said, hey, she just took them. And she says, and I said, I'll get the. And I said, what's your name? What's your address? And of course, she immediately gave me all the information, which is not unusual once people have, made the move. And the next information I got back was a few days later. We get the feedback ultimately is that the mother had no idea. She had no idea.
That's what I find so surprising is the people closest to them don't know.
Well, and it's because oftentimes, Karen, that they don't want to know. The kids say, I'm thinking about killing myself, and mom says, oh, don't talk like that.
Exactly.
Right, and that's that stigma thing, that prevents us from saying, "Oh my gosh, honey, talk to me." All right.
Right, and I have a client that I give your name out. Sorry, I give your name out and your phone number out to my clients because I train and I'm always in with a client or something, and it's hard to get a hold of me because I'm working. And so I give your name as second, along with the local suicide hotline. But the other thing is teenagers, a lot of them aren't comfortable with calling a hotline. They feel better knowing somebody. So that's the other thing. And I had spoken to her once, and it took a good 25-30 minutes to talk her down, to get her to get the blood back and her breathing and everything. And I know that she called you one night, and she was extremely close to suicide. It took you a good 40 minutes to get her to stop the looping. So I appreciate that. But the key here too is, first of all, she can't think because there's no blood in her prefrontal cortex. But her father, his way of handling it is, you'll be fine. And you have the wherewithal, and you're a wonderful girl, and I love you. Now he's in a military type situation, so he's a strong person. So he just buck up kind of thing.
Yep, well, tough it out.
Yeah, tough it out, exactly. And this is a young, very sensitive, late teens who feels so much emotion, and her dad says tough it out. So she just, I'm going to use his pain pills and. From some dental or leg thing that he had, and she knows where they are, and she's just, that's the easiest because he's hard on me, and even though he loves her, this is a better solution. And so you're not thinking right. But the father, who also does energy work, still with his own daughter, was like, buck up. And so I gave him the what for, of course, because that's what I do, and gave him a little, suicide prevention training. And he was amazed because he kept trying to logically talk. And I said, and if he's in the military, when you hear that from other people, you don't man up.
Yeah.
You talk to them, because manning up when you're there is, that only works a certain amount of time before you go, I'm not going to burden the rest of my men and, my buddies.
Yeah.
And so people have got to know that somebody's got to go, do you have suicidal thoughts, and help get them out of that loop.
Right.
And that's what's really difficult, because like you said, people don't want to do that. They feel very uncomfortable, and like they get itchy in their skin, and they won't say, are you thinking of killing yourself? Do you have suicidal thoughts?
Yeah.
And that's one of the wonderful things you do when you train, is to get people, you must say the word suicide, when you're training, say
Right.
the word suicide 20 times a minute until it doesn't hit you anymore.
Right.
And because you need to do that. And I think that's what's great about this training that you give. So is there anything else that right now that you want to say? We have about 5 minutes left.
You know, I would.
How about what if somebody wants to help? Do they want to volunteer? I know they can.
Well, let me tell you, I'll skip through where's my little thing about,
So while you're looking for it, I know that, learning about suicide, how to help, there's a difference between intervention and prevention. Prevention is getting them to somebody who's
Yep.
trained in intervention. So if you can just get them to talk them down to the point where getting them to somebody and handing off to a professional, that prevention is extremely important. And you
Yep.
don't have to be the person responsible for, stopping them from killing themselves, You're just postponing it. You can, the biggest thing too, and you interrupt me anytime you're ready, John, is to actually listen to them and not talk at them, because they need somebody to listen.
Yep.
You can donate to these recordings and to John at waronstress.org, but you can, donate to these crisis centers. You can teach people the short codes, how to text. You can show them where they can on get this kind of help. And what about volunteering? How do they do that?
Well, the volunteering, I've got my list here. It says they accept applications at any time, and they have new cohorts or new groups, mind you. Every 2 weeks, they start a new training. And, in the last 4 years, this crisis text line, let me just digress, because I think this is fascinating, how it got created.
Oh, yeah, sure.
A woman named Nancy Lublin, New Yorker, was working with her organization, DoSomething.org. And it's a special, it's an organization that's based on teenagers and youth and getting them involved in social activities and social services. And they do things like they picked up 3.5 million cigarette butts, right, for example, all across the world. They're in every zip code and 131 countries. And it's all about motivating kids to do things to help win the community. They did the largest sports gear gathering funding thing, that they provided sports gear to schools and kids all over the country that couldn't afford it. They do things like help with the elderly. But at any rate, it's all based on this information and challenges that are set out by this organization, Nancy Lubin's DoSomething.org. And they send out 200,000 emails and texts every week to teenagers all over the world. And this is in 2012, and they noticed that they were starting to get texts back from kids saying, I don't want to go to school today. The guys call me faggot. They tell me I'm fat and ugly and I'm gay. I don't know what to say. But the one that got Nancy's attention was that he keeps raping me. He told me not to tell anyone. It's my dad. Are you there?
Oh, boy.
And yeah, and that was in 2012. And she was so moved by that. She said, oh my gosh, these kids are reaching out to us, and it's in their way, through text. They're never going to call someone, right? They're not going to pull somebody aside. It's just, other than a friend. And so she hired a scientist and a data and a programmer, and they created the platform that we're working on now, and they're constantly upgrading it. But they started in 2013 in Chicago and El Paso, those area codes. And within 4.5 months, they had received texts from every area code in the United States. It was a faster ramp up for them than for Facebook. We've now done almost 28 million text messages since 2012 when it started. Can you imagine that?
Wow.
And the data that they get's amazing.
Isn't there some kind of Facebook thing?
Yeah, also, yes, if you can't text for some reason, the 4 main characters are all free for the crisis text line, but some of them that are prepaid, or some of the smaller ones, don't allow short codes, so you can go to Facebook Messenger. You don't have to use the phone. But you were asking me, I'm sorry, I got off on the story their story and how, okay, so to be a volunteer, you have to be 18. You have to pass a background check. You have to have no violent or sex offense in your life, and then you need their social security number. You have to have access to a computer and the internet connection, and you have to commit to volunteer for 4 hours a week for 1 year. And it's just, all I can say to you is it's the best training I've had in dealing with crisis with people. And it's just the most satisfying and most rewarding work, because the people that you work with are so dedicated and so totally involved, and almost all of them are under 30. I might be the oldest counselor on the line. I don't know. I haven't asked. Maybe I don't want to know, right?
Exactly. So how long have you been now? Usually there's somebody coming up here next for our next show, but there's not here, so that means that no one's here. So that means that we can have a little extra time.
Okay.
If you'd like to do something, maybe what would be really nice is, can you do a little bit until we have someone up of your training? Now I'm just being told that they are here. I'm not seeing.
Okay. All right.
All right. So okay. So if Mike is listening to me, can you tell me what their names are that are coming up next, Mike, and I'll bring them on. So go ahead and just explain a little bit what are the important points, or explain what the difference between intervention and prevention is.
Right. Well, with intervention, we're really working with the person to work through whatever the challenges are and giving them the skills and the information that they need to be able to handle what's happening with them. And whereas with prevention, we're recognizing what's happening. We get them to admit they're having thoughts of suicide and to agree to get the care and counsel that we need. And then we take them to that person, wherever it is, wherever they need to go to get that care. And most of all, I'm teaching prevention and awareness, because that's what we need. We need lots of people out there who are not uptight about suicide.
Yeah, we need everybody. I wish everyone would.
Everyone. It should be a school and a class in school. We should teach stress management, and we should teach suicide prevention and awareness in our schools.
Because I think people don't know. I mean, I didn't, and when I was younger, I didn't know there was a difference between prevention and intervention. I mean, it seems obvious now, but you know, it would have been much more comfortable to go to work in prevention and be able to hand someone off to an expert who's done this before.
Right. And that's the best training, and that's the training that everybody needs.
All right. John, waronstress.org. Thank you so much. Your wealth of knowledge. And I'm Karen Davidson at howtotap.com. John Staples on waronstress.org. And thank you so much, John. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Karen. It's always a pleasure to work with you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.